Welcome in, Minnesota sports fan. Jonathan Harrison here for Bringing the Sports alongside Will Raggets, Nolan O'Hara, and Tony Liebert for this edition of Bringing the Sports on YouTube. Boys, let's jump into it. A bad loss last night for the Twins. A disaster in the bullpen ruined another quality start for Bailey Ober. And Will, I know before the show, before we started recording, you said you were heated last night. You've calmed down now a couple hours, over 12 hours later. Let's bring that heat back in. Let's get you riled up and angry again. What happened last night for the Twins?
Yeah, it was bad. It was a very important game, especially with Cleveland beating the Yankees earlier in the day. And Bailey Ober was cruising again. They were up 3-1. Then Ober gives up a 2-run shot to Manny Machado, which happens. Griffin Jacks came in, cleaned up the rest of that inning. And then the Twins took the lead on a Christian Vasquez 2-run single. And so they're going to the bottom of the eighth, up by 2. Jacks had just thrown 10 pitches. They don't like to use him for multiple innings, but you'd think you could maybe in that kind of a spot. Or you can go to Joan Duran or Jorge Alcala try to get him another look after his blow-up game against the Rangers. Go to Cole Sands, whatever. They go to Steven Okert, and the rationale being that the Padres had a couple lefties coming up. But inevitably, they're going to pinch hit when you bring in the lefty. So they pinch hit Donovan Solano, who gets a hit. Luis Ariz, who can hit lefties, he gets a hit. And then Jerickson Profar, who's an all-star switch hitter, hits a 3-run homer. And Steven Okert, who's been horrible this season, who's given up, I don't have the stat in front of me, but it's like 15 runs over his last 12 innings.
Yep, that's
just
exactly right.
a terrible, that might be the actual stat, just a terrible outing for a guy who has done nothing to earn the trust of his manager in that spot in a game that the Twins needed to stay 2.5 back from the Guardians. It was just really frustrating to watch. Then they left him in. Rocco left him in for like 2 more hitters after that, which I didn't get. So it was, I understand the platoon thing. Rocco loves to platoon guys, whether it's pitching matchups or pinch hitting or whatever it is. He doesn't want lefties against lefties or righties against righties. But at some point, the talent has to matter a little bit more. And that's what frustrated me a lot, is that Steven Okert has been horrible. And it was just a really predictable blow up in that spot and a really ugly loss.
So then, with the problems the Twins have had in the bullpen this season, what's the concern level out of 10? Or maybe you do a meter, whatever, however you want to do it. What's the concern level for this bullpen if the Twins are able to reach the playoffs this year? We'll go around the horn here. We'll start with you.
Yeah, it's concerning. And they've had a good bullpen core. Like Duran, Jacks, Cole Sands has been really good. Alcala has been really good. But it comes back to the fact that they did nothing to supplement it at the trade deadline. They got Trevor Richards for a throwaway prospect who they don't use. They just use Trevor Richards in like mop-up duty. They don't put him in any leverage spots. So that was basically a pointless trade deadline. Brock Stewart's out. Justin Topa doesn't look like he's going to pitch at all. They got him this offseason. So my concern is like a 6 or a 7, because I still trust the top 3 guys, or the top 2 really, and then Sands and Alcala to varying degrees. But Caleb Thielbar, I don't know if I trust him. Steven Okert, like, they don't have a lefty you can count on. They didn't get one at the deadline. So, and you can't pitch Jackson Duran every single day. Like, it just doesn't work. So it's concerning. I would say I'm at like a 6 or a 7 on that front.
Nolan?
I think there's not. You can't take away too much from the one. I think there's no reason to be that concerned about the bullpen. Aside from that, there's no really clear fourth starter for a playoff rotation, so you might be looking at some short 2-3 inning starts in those games, and then you're going to have to use a lot of arms. The one concern I would say is you don't really have a super reliable lefty, because you've had like the Okert game last night. Thielbar has kind of had his ups and downs too, but you still have Alcala, who's been really good. You still have Duran, your closer, who's been really good. Jax has been really good. The right-handed arms have been good. I think the one thing that the concern is that you don't have a super reliable lefty. But I think the bigger issue just with that is that you're going to probably have to burn through a lot of bullpen arms in a playoff series. So I don't think I'd be super concerned about the bullpen exactly, but I do think there could be some worries there, just not having enough depth with how many arms you might have to use in the playoffs. But I'd probably put like a concern level of like a 5.
All right, Tony, your level of concern?
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of be in the middle between Nolan and Will. I think the top end of the bullpen, is suitable, and there shouldn't be much concern there. But depth, I definitely think, is an issue. And I mean, it really comes down to the amount of high pressure situations there are to use your bullpen, and how well your starters do, obviously. But so if it happens often in the playoffs where they're relying on the bullpen, like Nolan said, and maybe some short starts, like that could be an issue because it really challenges their depth. So if there's a lot of scenarios where they need to go there, I think it could be an issue. But I would kind of be in the 5 range, like Nolan said.
Final question on
Also
the
throw in
Twins.
Richards has been really good since that 5 walk game that he had, that 5 walk inning. Richards has been good. I think it's his last 8 innings or so that it has been scoreless. So not a total loss there at the trade deadline.
The thing with Richards is just that he's been good, but they don't trust him. Like that Texas game where Alcala gave up 5 runs in the 7th when they're up 4-0. They could have gone to Richards there, but they didn't, and they went to Alcala, who had pitched like 2 of the last 3 days before that. So they just don't trust him to use him, at least right now, in like real meaningful spots. We'll see if that changes. I also think you could consider bringing Louis Varland back to the bullpen like they did in the playoffs last year. He's been good out of that role in the past, but then if you do that, he's also your sixth. He's your starter who's next in line if one of the young guys get falters or if somebody gets hurt. So that's kind of a risky proposition as well.
Speaking of the
Paddock
starters,
could come back to the bullpen too.
He could.
Yeah.
He could.
Speaking of the starters, are we on the verge of having a question mark of who's going to take the first game in the playoffs between Bailey Ober and Pablo Lopez? Will?
I think we might be. I mean, Pablo Lopez, if you're starting the playoff series tomorrow, he probably still gets the ball. I mean, not literally tomorrow with like pitching rotations and stuff, but he's still earned that as a veteran who was really, really good last year, has been a lot better in the second half after a slow start. But I don't know. Bailey Ober he's up to 11 straight complete games. He's just been really consistent. He had the one mistake to Machado last night, but it'll be interesting if he keeps doing this the rest of August, all of September. Like, he could put himself in position to be a legitimate option for a game 1 start.
All right, so second topic of the day, Gophers in the news. Gophers football team, 11 players named to the 2025 Senior Bowl watch list. Tony, you wrote this article over on Gophers on SI, so let's get the rundown on these Gophers that made the list. And let's talk about a little bit about the season opener next Thursday against North Carolina.
Yeah, so the Senior Bowl is obviously a big time in the pre-draft process for a lot of those guys to showcase their skills in front of NFL scouts. And PJ Fleck's done a really good job of developing NFL talent. The last 5-6 years has been one of the more impressive stretches in that, so to speak, when you look at the history of the program. So when you look at the 11 players, Ariante Ursary is a clear, I guess, highlight that he has a good chance of even becoming a first-round pick next spring, getting a lot of hype as maybe one of the best offensive tackles in the country. And then there's also players like Jaw Joyner that could hear his name called, maybe even in the top 100 if he has an impressive season this year. And then players like Max Brosmer and Daniel Jackson, if they have a big breakout year with hopefully a newer, high-powered offense, they could maybe hear their names called on day 3. But there's a lot to like from that list and a lot of veteran talent heading into this season.
What are you thinking? What are your thoughts about kind of the opener coming up here?
Yeah, totally. So it's definitely a good test for the Gophers, big non-conference game versus North Carolina. And they have a tough schedule this year with the new 4 teams coming into the Big Ten. And North Carolina has an interesting outlook this year. They're probably going to use 2, maybe 3 quarterbacks in the first game. There's just a lot of questions, I guess, on both sides. The Gophers have a new defensive coordinator, and North Carolina's been going through a couple of coordinators the past few years as well. They're a very run-heavy team led by Omarion Hampton, who's one of the better running backs in the country. So if the Gophers' defense is able to utilize their depth on the defensive line, I think they should be able to stay in that game and keep up. But I think we're going to learn a lot about both sides pretty early in the game. So it'll be a good springboard, I think, for the whole season.
We excited about the season? What's our level of excitement going into this Gopher football season after what happened, everything that happened last year with them?
Yeah, I mean, for me, they made a lot of changes. Like I said, their new quarterback, new defensive coordinator, and hopefully they can make some changes schematically on offense. That kind of has limited them the past few years, being such a run-centric team. If they're able to open things up a little bit more and try to see what Max Brosmer has throwing the football and kind of use the depth that they have at running back with three transfers they brought in, led by Marcus Major. Darius Taylor will obviously be the center point of this team and this offense in 2024, but I think there's a lot of questions, but like good questions, because PJ Fleck and his staff clearly realized that last year was a disappointment, and they made a lot of changes heading into this year.
So then expectations, we'll dive into this more later on in the week, but expectations kind of roughly heading into the season. We'll go once again around the horn or around and get all your guys' expectations for the Gophers this season. Tony?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think there's a lot of different scenarios how this season could happen when you have a quarterback that's never played at the FBS level and a new defensive coordinator. There's a lot of different things that could happen, and I think the Gophers will be in a lot of games this year, and the North Carolina game I think is going to show a lot, because if they fall early, then they got Michigan, Iowa, and USC right around the corner, and things could start off on the wrong foot. But I think they'll go bowling again this year, and I think they'll be around that 6-7 win range.
Nolan?
Yeah, I think that is probably about my expectation too. I mean, it's a tough schedule, and the way college football is, I don't think you can't expect them to be a contender now or maybe for the foreseeable future. So I guess from an excitement level, it's like always fun to watch football. But yeah, I think the expectations, it's probably like a bowl game ceiling. But I think it'll be really exciting to watch Darius Taylor again, hopefully healthy for a full year. What he did towards the beginning of last season, before any of the injury issues, was really exciting. What he did in the bowl game was really exciting. It'll be a lot of fun to be able to watch him. So definitely looking forward to that.
Will, your expectations
Yeah,
for the Gophers this season?
I'm in the same range. I'm a Northwestern guy. I don't know. We're not going to be very good this year, probably, but the Gophers. I think when you break in a new quarterback who hasn't played at the FBS level, you have a really tough schedule. I just don't see how the ceiling can be much higher than, like Nolan said, maybe getting to 6 or 7 wins and getting to a bowl game. There's some talent for sure on both sides of the ball, but I don't know that they have the overall pieces. It feels like it could be kind of a transitional year with a new quarterback, a new defensive coordinator. And I mean, I think PJ Fleck's done a great job with this program on the whole, like producing a lot of NFL talent. That 2019 season was really, really fun, but this does not look like it's going to be one of those teams that sneaks up into the upper echelon of the Big Ten.
For sure. Gophers, North Carolina in Minneapolis next Thursday, 7 p.m. National television on Fox. Can't wait for the Gopher season to get going again. Let's switch over to Vikings. Will, you wrote this story a couple hours ago on Vikings on SI about Vikings players kind of standing behind Brian Flores throughout this whole thing. Josh Metellus and Harrison Phillips kind of surrounding him as during his press conference yesterday in front of media, which was his first chance to talk and get his comments about Tua's comments about their relationship when Brian Flores was the head coach. My question off of this is, are we making too big of a story about Tua's comments? It seems like this kind of blew up, and Brian Flores had some good comments of his own and saying that he always expects to be the guy who's coaching and improving and critiquing players, and he's building off and learning from the mistakes he may have made in Miami. Notably, he did not say that what Tua said was wrong, so it's a big thing that Brian Flores notably left out. But are we making too big of a story of this?
I mean, we might be. It's just one of those classic kind of off-season stories where, I mean, there's a lot of things going on in the NFL right now, training camps and roster cuts are coming up, but still, we're not in the regular season where there's tons to talk about. So, yeah, it's one of those things that pops up. He does a podcast interview, and it's notable the way that he described um, the way that Brian Flores kind of treated him when they were in Miami and telling him like
Hmm.
every day, like, you suck, you don't belong here, like you don't. That goes a little bit beyond tough love from a head coach. Um, and yeah, Brian Flores didn't exactly deny that or apologize. I kind of believe to I'm inclined to believe to his experiences. So it's not great. I think there's a line between the tough coaching from like a guy under Bill Belichick's school and just being going over the top and doing things that aren't going to help players get the best version of themselves out. So, yeah, I mean, Flores, I thought he acknowledged it well. He acknowledged that, he's grown, he's learned. There were things he probably could have done better, and he really cares about player relationships. But it seems like he did not handle the whole situation with Tua well. And hopefully that's just kind of a lesson learned that something he can avoid in the future, because not everybody responds to coaching the same way. And maybe they can meet up someday and kind of mend fences, hopefully.
Well, the Dolphins will be on the schedule eventually, so you would think that the two are going to meet up. Because if last offseason is any indicator about Brian Flores' chances of head coaching in this league in the future, Nolan, I don't imagine that Flores will be getting a head coaching job anytime soon. So he's probably going to be sticking around here for quite a while.
I mean, for Vikings fans, you kind of hope so, right? Kind of want him to stick around
Yeah.
because the way he turned around that defense the first year. It's been kind of the hope. Hopefully, you almost hope that it just keeps playing out this way for a while and that he can stick around. But I mean, those comments, yeah, they're probably not going to help his chances or of anything. But I think that is kind of an overblown thing. I mean, at the end of the day, this is the NFL. This isn't high school football. I mean, what do people think coaches are saying to players who are playing terribly? Um, it's not like you're not there to sugarcoat things. He's also from the Belichick tree, so this is not like he's going to be the Sean McVay kind of guy. He's it's maybe not great. Maybe it was just a really bad way. Tua didn't respond to it, obviously, and he's obviously responding a lot better to Mike McDaniel. But I think there are things that tend to get a little overblown, and a few mean comments to a borderline whatever comments as a rookie head coach at the time to a player who isn't playing well. I don't think that's by any means something that should disqualify him from a head coaching opportunity in the future.
It is notable that his next two moves after getting fired from Miami were to go and coach under head coaches that are typically generally thought of as being more player friendly, in Mike Tomlin and now Kevin O'Connell, who's shown to be one of the more popular head coaches according to the NFL PA poll that comes out every year, Will.
Yeah, I think it's been a really good fit for Brian Flores in Minnesota and all of his players here. You're not going to find anybody with bad things to say about him, or at least I haven't yet. So they really like him. They love the system that he runs and the way that he kind of empowers guys to do what they're best at. I mean, saw a lot of guys have career years last year under Flores. Josh Metellus had been mostly a special teams guy throughout his first 3 seasons, and then just blew up and had a huge season under Flores. I mean, Ivan Pace thrived. Daniil Hunter had a huge year. Cam Bynum, like, you can go on and on. And Flores is a player's coach in the sense that he's going to put you in positions to succeed on the field. And I think he can probably be a little bit of a hard-nosed guy from his coaching style at times, but so are a lot of people in the NFL. I would think that even though Kevin O'Connell in his press conferences comes across as like the nicest guy, he's getting mad sometimes behind the scenes and cursing out players and getting on them when they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think everybody in the NFL, you have to do that at some point. So I agree with Nolan too that even if Brian Flores, if he doesn't get a head coaching gig for a while, which his whole lawsuit against the league complicates things, this Tua thing complicates things, that'd be perfectly fine with Kevin O'Connell and the Vikings. They would love to have him here for a long time as their defensive coordinator.
And if the players do respect him as well as much as it seemed like they did yesterday, at least they showed it. That's a good sign for the coaching staff that the Vikings have built up over the last couple of years. A questionable sign is a guy who is a rumor that came out earlier. Well, not a rumor, speculation, maybe just fun throwing ideas out from former general manager Mike Tannenbaum on Get Up this morning on ESPN. Threw out the idea, Nolan, of the Vikings trading for Russell Wilson because apparently it's not going well in Pittsburgh. So apparently, as quoting from Mike Tomlin this morning, or Mike Tannenbaum this morning, a win-win here is to trade Russell Wilson to Minnesota. I think he's a better quarterback than Sam Darnold. They certainly can battle it out. I'm not in on this idea. I don't imagine you guys are either.
Well, I mean, it's not the worst idea in the world as far as
No, that's
it's not
Jameis
going to
Winston.
cost you anything. Jameis Winston's the best idea in the world, but I mean, it's not the worst idea in the world. You know, there was the Ian Rappaport tweet the other day where he was like, expect the Vikings to keep an eye out for a veteran who might get cut or who's going to be a cut and they could, trade a conditional pick or whatever. I mean, he's a veteran quarterback who could add something to the room. Does he beat out Darnold? I don't. If he's not beating out Justin Fields, I don't know. But it's not the worst idea in the world. There's to have some insurance there. I don't know what the contract situation looks like or if that's anything that would even be the Vikings would even be remotely interested in pursuing. But it's not the worst idea in the world. Is he going to come in and save the day and look like Russell Wilson of 5, 6, 7 years ago in Seattle? Probably not. But it's an idea. Like I can see throwing it out there. It's not a surefire quarterback room in Minnesota. He could, in theory, compete for the job, but he's apparently not beating out Justin Fields right now. So I don't know how much that's really going to be adding to the roster.
Yeah, can't imagine. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna disagree with you, Nolan. I think it is, in fact, the worst idea in the world, or at least in that ballpark. Just not to say that Russell Wilson is like miles worse than Sam Darnold, because that would be kind of foolish to suggest given Sam Darnold's career. But the fact is that the Vikings had the opportunity this offseason if they wanted to pursue Russell Wilson like earlier and give him time to come in and learn their offense and compete and potentially be their bridge guy. They could have tried to swing a trade for him and or signed him or whatever, and they didn't do it. So the fact that he's in Pittsburgh now and losing out apparently on a quarterback competition with Justin Fields, who couldn't cut it in Chicago, like to think that Russell Wilson would come in and learn Kevin O'Connell's system quickly and beat out Sam Darnold. It's just it reeks to me of the Get Up guys not having a segment or needing something to fill a segment on TV and just throwing that out there, because that it just doesn't make any sense. Darnold this whole offseason has been learning the Viking system, the intricacies of what Kevin O'Connell does on offense. He was the guy they chose back in March to be their bridge option to an eventual rookie. There would be no sense in giving up on that now, 2 weeks before the start of the season, and trying to get another quarterback up to speed in what we've learned from Kirk Cousins and everybody else who's been here is a complicated offense. So it is a 0% chance of happening. Russell Wilson was good back in the day, don't get me wrong, but Sam Darnold and Nick Mullins are going to be the quarterbacks here this year, for better or for worse.
Russell Wilson's kind of proven that Seattle traded him away for a reason over the past handful of years, and Seattle's been proven right by that. They moved on and got Geno Smith, and he proved it to be pretty successful, getting them to the playoffs and kind of reshaping his career. But yeah, I kind of agree with you guys. If he can't beat out Justin Fields, I don't want any part of him. Even if he is better than Jameis Winston, I still don't want any part of him, Nolan. I think you're the only one on the panel who thinks that this might be a worthy idea here. But I don't. Also, if you go out and get him, I don't think that's a good message to send to Sam Darnold at this point, who we all know hasn't had a great career to begin with, and you're giving him the chance to kind of get things going. But if you go out and get and acquire Russell Wilson in a trade or however you pick him up, I don't think that's a great message to send to Sam Darnold at this point, Will.
Yeah, this year doesn't really matter that much in the big picture. Like the Vikings could maybe surprise people. and be decent. I think Joe Nelson would tell you that they're going to win like 12 games, but it's not going to happen.
It's either 12 games or 3 games. It
Yeah,
varied with him yesterday.
Yeah, the bold predictions. This year is just kind of a. I don't want to say it's a throwaway year because they have a lot of talent, but it's all about the future. It's all about getting J.J. McCarthy healthy and starting to build him up in 2025 and beyond. And to see what you can do this year in year 2 of Brian Flores' defense with some pieces on offense, give Darnold a chance to have that Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield type of late career resurgence. And if that happens, who knows? Things could get interesting. But they're not just going to suddenly scrap that plan and bring in a guy who they think has a shot of being marginally better. Like, just this, if it was a quarterback who maybe on a win now team could give you a slightly better chance of going really far, then sure. But that's not the context of the Vikings this year. I don't think Russell Wilson makes sense at all in Kevin O'Connell's scheme. It's going to be Darnold, and maybe it goes well. Maybe it goes terribly, and we end up seeing some more Nick Mullins. But we're going to find out.
You kind of predicted it today in your article.
One way or another. Yeah, I did my little bold predictions article and said that the Vikings quarterbacks were going to combine for 30 interceptions. So that would be entertaining in a sick and twisted kind of way if that happens.
Are you guys nixing the idea of trading Lewis Cine for Russell Wilson here? Is that what I'm hearing here, Nolan?
I think you might want to hold on to Cine for a little bit. He looked pretty good in that last preseason game, and I think you probably don't have a place. I mean, even if you did trade for Russell Wilson, it's to be the backup, and then if and when like if Darnold ends up playing bad or gets hurt or something, then he's your backup. But you're not starting Russell Wilson. He will not be walking out on the field week 1 against the New York Giants.
Yeah, it'd be a quick turnaround for him. Boys, been good talking to you today. Tony bumped out a little bit early, had to go get his haircut, had to go get pretty for everything that he's doing on his side. But we'll talk to you Minnesota Sports Fans tomorrow right back here on Bringing